Part 1. The setup expanded. The cheap Pinot Grigio was practically burning a hole through my stomach lining. But hey, it was Wine and Wine Wednesday, and a girl's gotta commit. My apartment was small, cluttered with half-finished art projects and overflowing bookshelves, but it felt cozy enough on nights like these, the fairy lights strung across the window casting a soft, forgiving glow. The laptop screen illuminated my face with an unflattering bluish light, reflecting the chaos of our group call. Chloe, bless her heart, was mid-rant about her boss again, while Noah was busy showing off his sourdough starter like it was a newborn baby. Typical. Then there was Liam. He was laughing, that easy, carefree laugh that made my stomach do a weird flip-flop thing, even though I knew I shouldn't let it. He was sitting in what looked like the back of his vintage car, a string of Edison lights twinkling in the background. The topic, as it often did, had drifted to dating. The digital graveyard of dead-end dates and ghosting horror stories that plagued our generation. Noah was complaining about the impossible standards on dating apps. Chloe was detailing another disastrous encounter with a guy who thought mansplaining was a flirting technique. Then it was Liam's turn. He'd just ended what he called a situationship, a term that always sounded vaguely depressing to me. He sighed dramatically, running a hand through his perpetually messy brown hair. He laughed during a group call with friends and said, "She's not ugly, she's just artistically challenged," which earned him a collective groan from Chloe and a sarcastic, "Oh, very mature" Liam from Noah. I stayed quiet, swirling the ruby-tinged remains of my wine in the glass. Liam's comments stirred something deeply uncomfortable in me, a prickling sensation under my skin. It wasn't about her, whoever she was, though I did feel a twinge of sympathy for the unknown girl. It was about him. About the casually dismissive way he often treated women, a pattern I'd observed for years. He possessed this disarming, effortless charm, the kind that made girls swoon and write his name in their notebooks. I'd been guilty of this once or twice back in college, but underneath there was often this detached quality. Like he didn't really see them or value them, beyond the initial spark of attraction. He seemed to think they were just expendable. I knew I shouldn't care. Logically, rationally, I understood that his dating life was his business and he was just a friend. Just a friend. But the truth was I did care. Way more than I probably should. I couldn't help the way my heart skipped a beat when he looked at me, or the small, foolish hope that flickered inside me whenever he called. He was witty, undeniably handsome, and genuinely funny. But he was also infuriating, oblivious, and possibly emotionally stunted. Chloe, ever the peacemaker and skilled deflector, saw the tightening in my jaw and quickly steered the conversation towards the upcoming Friendsgiving we were planning. We were all tasked with bringing a dish to share, a potluck of mismatched culinary ambitions and varying levels of cooking skills. Liam immediately and predictably volunteered to bring the wine, proclaiming himself a connoisseur of fermented grapes with a self-deprecating wink. Because, he's so helpful. And so good at avoiding actual work. As we descended into the familiar chaos of planning, debating the merits of homemade cranberry sauce versus the canned jelly kind, arguing over whether green bean casserole was a crime against humanity, I am firmly in the pro camp, I still couldn't shake the feeling that something was off with Liam. He had been acting a bit differently lately, more withdrawn than usual, a shadow lurking behind his usual bright smile. He'd been canceling plans at the last minute, responding to texts with vague, non-committal answers. More guarded. It was subtle, but noticeable, like a minor chord in a cheerful melody. I just couldn't quite put my finger on what it was, and it was driving me crazy. Something was simmering beneath the surface, and I was determined to find out what. Part 2. The project expanded. The next day, around midday, a notification popped up on my phone. A direct message from Liam. Usually, I'd feel a little thrill, a tiny burst of dopamine. But today, the message felt different. Ominous, almost. He was usually so flippant, so quick with a sarcastic jab or a goofy meme. This was unusually direct. "Hey Sarah, got a sec? Needed your advice on something." I chewed on my lip, a knot forming in my stomach. What could he possibly need my advice on? Fixing his car? Negotiating a better price on vinyl records? Definitely not something involving feelings. Sure, I replied, trying to sound casual. What's up? There was a pause, longer than necessary, while the little typing bubble danced on my screen, adding to my growing unease. Then the message finally appeared. Okay, so remember that girl I was talking about last night? The artistically challenged one. My eyes narrowed. Here we go. This was either going to be incredibly awkward or incredibly infuriating. Possibly both. I mentally braced myself for a barrage of excuses and justifications. Yeah, I replied cautiously, keeping my tone neutral. I remember. Well, he continued, and the pause felt even more drawn out this time. She's actually really important to me. And I messed up. Badly. She overheard the wine and wine thing, and understandably, she's furious. Like, full-on radio silence. Deleted me from all social media platforms furious. I want to fix things, but I have absolutely no idea how. You're good at this kind of stuff. You always know what to say. You're like the queen of apologies and making amends. Can you help me? My blood simmered. He wanted my help to win back a girl he just publicly, albeit indirectly, insulted. The hypocrisy was almost too much to bear. The gall. My first impulse was to type back a scathing response, a perfectly crafted takedown of his cluelessness and entitlement. But then I looked closer at the message. Despite the awkward phrasing, there was a genuine note of concern, a hint of vulnerability in his request. He truly seemed to care, or at least to be genuinely upset that he'd messed things up. And if I was honest with myself, a small part of me, the foolish, hopeful part, was curious. I sighed inwardly. He was playing me, or trying to, and I was letting him. Fine. I typed, adding a mental eye roll. But you owe me big time. And this better not involve any serenades or public displays of affection. I'm not about to be an accomplice in some cringe-worthy rom-com moment. What exactly do you want me to do? His reply was almost instant. Seriously? You'll help? Amazing. Okay, so I basically need you to, well, figure out what she likes. What makes her tick? What kind of grand gesture, if any, would actually work? I'm clueless. I'm usually good at this stuff, but I've totally blown it. I snorted. You're usually good at this stuff? Liam, you usually rely on your charm and a well-timed joke. That doesn't exactly scream deep understanding to me. Okay, fair point, he conceded. But I really like her, Sarah. I actually do. And I don't want to lose her because I said something stupid on a drunken video call. He didn't say he loved her. Didn't even say he was in love with her. Just that he liked her. A lot, apparently. But enough to swallow his pride and ask for my help? Enough to expose his own vulnerability? It was enough to pique my interest, at least. Alright, I typed, resigning myself to this ridiculous mission. Consider me your relationship consultant. But you have to be completely honest with me. No hiding anything. No holding back. I need all the details. And I reserve the right to veto any ideas I deem too cheesy or cliché. Got it. Got it, he replied, adding a thumbs-up emoji. You're the best, Sarah. Seriously. The best, huh? That's what friends were for, I suppose. To clean up each other's messes. Even when those messes involved navigating the treacherous waters of modern romance and rescuing emotionally inept guys from their own foot-and-mouth disease. I closed my laptop, a mixture of dread and a strange, unsettling excitement churning inside me. This was going to be a long and possibly very painful project. Part 3. The investigation expanded. My mission was simple, in theory. Figure out what made this Maya tick, what her passions were, what gestures of affection would resonate with her, and what would come off as insincere or manipulative. In practice, it felt like navigating a minefield, armed with nothing but a smartphone and a rapidly dwindling supply of patience. So I did what any self-respecting modern woman with a slightly unhealthy dose of curiosity and a whole lot of free time would do. I went full-on social media stalker. I started with the obvious, Instagram. I searched for Maya and his followers. There were dozens, maybe hundreds. Okay, I had to be more targeted. I asked Liam if he knew her full name. He hesitated, then sent it. Maya Carter. Carter felt like a common last name too, damn it. After half an hour more of scrolling and staring, I found her. Or at least, I thought I found her. The profile picture was a close-up of a pair of bright green eyes, peering out from behind a curtain of dark hair. The account was private. Damn it. I requested to follow her, but there was no guarantee she'd accept. Frustrated, I started clicking through mutual friends. I cross-referenced the cities they lived in with Liam's social media. Bingo. This Maya's Instagram was curated, but not overly so. The photos were artfully composed, bathed in natural light, but they also felt real. She loved art, especially photography, judging by the numerous pictures she'd taken of local galleries and street art. She had a flair for vintage clothing, pairing thrift store finds with modern pieces in a way that felt effortlessly chic. And she adored rescued dogs, her feed peppered with adorable pictures of a scruffy terrier mix named Pickles. She seemed genuine. The kind of girl who valued authenticity and substance over surface-level charm, which made Liam's artistically challenged comment seem even more cringeworthy, and the more I thought about it, the more I wanted to push his head under the lake. I took notes on her profile, analyzing her style, her interests, her apparent values. I dug deeper, searching for her on other platforms. Her Twitter was mostly retweets about animal rights and political activism. She was passionate about social justice, vocal about her beliefs, and unafraid to use her voice. She had a strong moral compass, a clear sense of who she was. This wasn't going to be easy. This wasn't some vapid influencer who'd be swayed by a bouquet of roses and a box of chocolates. This was someone who valued substance, integrity, and genuine connection. Meanwhile, I started extracting details from Liam about their relationship. What did they do together? What did they talk about? What were their inside jokes? What were the good times like? He was frustratingly vague, focusing mostly on how chill she was and how they both liked going to the same trendy coffee shop on Main Street. He kept using words like laid-back and low-key, which told me absolutely nothing. He was more focused on the superficialities rather than the deeper layers of their connection. It became increasingly clear that he knew her on a superficial level. His attraction was based on an initial spark of physical attraction, perhaps a shared sense of humor, rather than a deep understanding of her values, her dreams, or her fears. The more I learned about Maya, the more I realized that a grand, public apology wouldn't work. It would reek of desperation and come across as performative, insincere. She needed something personal, something that showed Liam actually cared, that he actually understood her, and that he was genuinely remorseful for his thoughtless comment. I started forming a plan, piecing together the fragments of information I had gleaned from her online presence and Liam's limited insights. But I needed more information. I needed to find a way to get inside her head, to understand her perspective. I needed to know what would truly move her. Part 4. The revelation expanded. One evening, after a particularly frustrating day of dead-end leads and vague answers from Liam, I insisted we meet at our usual coffee shop, The Daily Grind. Ironically named, considering how little grinding actually happened there, mostly just gossiping and caffeine-fueled procrastination. I needed to lay out the plan to see if I could actually salvage this ridiculous situation. The aroma of roasted coffee beans and the low hum of conversation filled the air, a familiar and comforting backdrop to the impending awkwardness. I arrived first, snagging our usual corner booth near the window. Liam was late, as usual. I used the time to review my notes, rereading Maya's social media posts, trying to get a better sense of her personality. When Liam finally showed up, he looked harried, his hair even more disheveled than usual, and a nervous energy radiating off him. "Sorry I'm late," he said, sliding into the booth. "Work thing. Total nightmare." He didn't meet my eyes. "It's fine," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Let's just focus on this. I think I've got something." I pulled out my notebook, spreading my notes across the table. "Okay," I said, laying out my plan. Maya is clearly not someone who's impressed by grand gestures or superficial displays. Forget the flowers, forget the expensive gifts. You need to show her you actually get her. That you understand her values, her passions, her sense of humor. I think I know how. I outlined my idea, a detailed plan involving a handwritten letter expressing genuine remorse, a small donation to her favorite animal rescue organization, and a carefully curated playlist of her favorite music. I emphasized the importance of sincerity, authenticity, and humility, As I spoke, Liam's face grew increasingly pale. At first, I thought it was relief, a sign that he actually appreciated my efforts. But then, I noticed a flicker of something else in his eyes, a flash of fear, perhaps even guilt. "Wait," he said, interrupting me, his voice suddenly tight. "How did you know all that stuff about her? The vintage clothing, the rescue dogs, the specific type of fair trade organic coffee she likes? She's only posted about that once years ago." I blinked, confused by his reaction. "From her social media, duh. I told you I did my research. I'm a great detective. And from what you told me." I was so tired of this project and these excuses. He shook his head slowly, his brow furrowed. "I never told you about her favorite coffee, or about pickles, or the rescue organization she donates to." A cold dread began to creep up my spine, a chilling premonition that something was terribly wrong. I pulled out my phone, a knot forming in my stomach. I opened Maya's Instagram profile, the one I had been stalking so thoroughly for the past few days. It was private, always had been. So was her Twitter. I definitely requested to follow her a few days ago, but she never accepted. How did I know those things? How had I pieced together such a detailed profile of someone whose social media was locked down tighter than Fort Knox? When did Liam even tell me her name? Had he even said it? I searched my memory, desperately trying to recall the moment when he had revealed that crucial piece of information. But it was a blank. The name Maya seemed to have materialized in my head, fully formed. I looked at Liam, a terrifying realization dawning on my face. He was watching me, his expression a mixture of anxiety and something else, something I couldn't quite decipher. "What the hell is going on, Liam?" I said, my voice trembling slightly, despite my best efforts to control it. "Why didn't I follow her Instagram after requesting?" He hesitated, avoiding my eyes. He shifted in his seat, fiddling with the sugar packets on the table. Finally, he confessed, the words tumbling out in a rush. "Okay, so Maya isn't real." Part 5, The Twist Expanded. "What do you mean, not real?" I demanded, my voice rising despite my attempts to keep it down. The low hum of the coffee shop faded into background noise as my focus narrowed entirely on Liam, on the web of lies he had spun, on the sheer audacity of his deception. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, a sickening mix of anger, betrayal, and utter disbelief. Liam visibly winced, shrinking back into the booth. "I made her up. It was a project. For my creative writing class. I had to create a fictional character and then develop a believable online presence for her. The wine and wine comment was just a setup, a dramatic hook. I wanted to see if I could make her seem real to all of you, to test my world building." I stared at him, utterly speechless. He had manipulated all of us, but especially me. He had exploited my feelings, my insecurities, my willingness to help. The thought of how freely I had poured my energy into this fake project, how much time I'd wasted on stalking a figment of his imagination, made my stomach churn. I forced a shaky laugh, a sound that felt hollow and strained. "And you used me to win her back? You asked me for relationship advice, for guidance on how to make amends, for emotional support, all for a fake girlfriend." He squirmed, his face flushed with a mixture of guilt and embarrassment. "I knew you were good at this stuff, that you have the best writing advice. I thought you'd be a great resource on this project. And, well, I didn't really know you felt like this. About me." The truth hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. All this time, I had secretly harbored a crush on him, a hope that maybe, just maybe, he saw me as more than just a friend. I thought he was just a bit dense, oblivious to the subtle cues I'd been sending his way for years. But now it was clear he knew. He had to have known. Had this been some elaborate social experiment to see how far I would go for him? To gauge the depth of my feelings? Just to satisfy his own ego? To play with my emotions for the sake of some stupid writing assignment? The realization stung like a slap in the face. I looked at him, a strange and complicated mess of emotions swirling inside me. There was anger, yes, and hurt, and a profound sense of betrayal. But beneath all that, there was also a deep, lingering disappointment. I had built him up in my mind, imagining him to be someone thoughtful, kind, and genuine. But he had revealed himself to be selfish, manipulative, and utterly lacking in empathy. "You are unbelievable, Liam," I said, my voice shaking with barely suppressed rage. "I can't believe I wasted my time helping you on this stupid project. I am so done with this. And with you." I stood up abruptly, knocking over my half-empty coffee cup in the process. The hot liquid spilled across the table, a fitting symbol of the mess he had created. I grabbed my bag, ignoring his protests as he tried to apologize, to explain, to minimize his actions. I walked out of the coffee shop, leaving him sitting there, stunned and bewildered. As I walked, the cool evening air hit my face, clearing my head slightly. I replayed the events of the past few days in my mind, re-examining every interaction, every conversation. I thought about Maya, the perfect, idealized girl he had created, the girl who embodied all the qualities he supposedly admired. And then, a realization dawned on me, a spark of defiance igniting within my chest. I knew Maya even better than he did. After all, I had helped him write her. I had fleshed out her personality, shaped her interests, given her a voice. I had poured my own creativity, my own imagination, into bringing her to life. And if I wanted, I could write a very different ending to their story. I smiled, a slow, mischievous smile that spread across my face. He thought he was in control, that he was the author of this narrative. But he was wrong. I had the power to rewrite the script, to take control of the narrative, to turn his own creation against him. Maybe I would have Maya start writing her own creative writing project, a project about the guy she was seeing who was a complete and total emotional moron. Maybe that was exactly what I would do. Maybe I'd even make it a bestseller. My head started to spin with ideas, a surge of creative energy coursing through my veins. This wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. And this time, I was the one holding the pen. I pulled out my phone and started writing,